Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Sandy here. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be making this lovely pinch pleat pelmet. It's going to be fully lined with pinch pleats and it will have Velcro sewn at the back which will attach to a pelmet board. I hope you enjoy. Today we have this really beautiful fabric on the bench. It's a lovely colour, duck egg, blues, greens. It's just stunning. So I've already cut a piece of the fabric out. Now I'm basing this piece on the actual curtains at the top. So the pattern match at the top is actually this. First of all, I've got to make sure that's going to be at the top of the pelmet. When the pelmet's up, it will look like the pattern is the same above it, which is quite important to do. So I'm going to be placing this flat on the actual width of the fabric and then make sure I find my pattern. Now obviously at the end is not where the pattern is and you've got to keep going until you find it. So I'm following this little thing here and that is there. So I will move this up so that that's in place, and then you can actually see it here as well so that it's exactly matched here. Now this bit here will be wastage, and that's what you get with a lot of patterns. You get a lot of wastage. I mean, this isn't a huge amount. You couldn't do a cushion with this, but I am doing tie backs, so I will be doing a tutorial for that as well, but that'll be separate. So I'm laying the pattern on, as you can see, and I'm then going to cut it here so that we've got the same pattern right at the bottom of the pelmet, and then I'm going to bring this down and then cut along the top. So I'm just going to make sure this is in place before I start cutting. So I'm just going to cut along here, make sure it's completely in line. It's got to be deadly accurate. I'll just keep going along, just got to adjust it as you go. If you think you've gone out a little bit, just move it so that it's in line, and then just keep going. So this piece here I'm going to use for the tie backs. I'll probably have another one up there, so I'll probably cover the tie backs in the same fabric instead of lining, which makes them look a lot more luxurious. So I'm now going to move this down and make sure my pattern is still in place before I start cutting along the top. So make sure the pattern is lined up, and then I'm going to cut along the top. Okay, so that's two done. Okay, so I've pulled this down and position this in place again. So we have to move it up so that we've got our pattern here, and then we've got the two things here. So that looks like it's in place there, and then move that there. Okay, that looks like it's in line. So I'm now going to cut that piece at the bottom again. Now the drop of this pelmet is 22 centimetres, so obviously you have to make sure that what you're cutting is going to be ample for your turn-ins at the bottom and the top. And then start cutting along the top. So this is number 3. Down. Pattern is so well matched, I can't see it. Right, and then the final one. Okay, so here is the side. So make sure, obviously first thing, make sure your fabric is up the right way. And what we're then going to do is we're going to lay our pattern flat and we're going to look at it. Right, so this is the pattern. So what we do is we can see the pattern is here. The actual join should be here. So we've got to sort of like join it halfway between the two. So we know that this bit here has a little flower and then it has that, because you can see it there. So I am going to go just to the flower and then see if that works. So is that a good place to do my pattern matching? So I'm just fiddling about really. I'm obviously there needs to be joined there. So can you see what I'm doing, guys? So I'm like fiddling about and seeing where the pattern needs to be joined. And let me show you what I've done there. So what I've done is I've laid that there, and then that I'm going to join like that. And then this one I'm going to join so that you only got half of that little flower there, and then make sure these are all lining up here. And then this is all lining up here. And then obviously I've got to tuck that in, but I'm holding the phone so it's a bit difficult to do it. Basically it's going to look like that. So what I need to do is I'm going to iron that in place. And the same applies when you're doing curtains, only that we're just doing a very small amount for the Pelmet, so it's only a very tiny amount. But I'm going to iron this, and then I'm going to show you the next stage. Before I iron. That's the first bit. And then right, so that's everything all pattern matched there. Right, here comes the next trick. Double-sided tape. This is genius. So watch, guys. Bear in mind, when you put your pattern on, you have to allow, so obviously the crease line here is going to be your sew line. So make sure you don't put the double-sided tape too far to the edge of the actual curtain. Just do it about, I don't know, half a centimetre, if that, so that you don't want to be going into the double-sided tape with your needle. Right, so you lay your double-sided tape on, just take a piece off the width of the piece you're doing. If you're doing a curtain, then take it off as you go. But I'm going to position mine so that it's literally that much away from the actual fabric. So go all the way along the same amount and press really hard down with the tape so that it really sticks to the fabric. Take off the covering piece of the tape to reveal your sticky side. And then place your pattern together how it was. Now you do get another chance, so if you go wrong, just don't panic, just pick it up and then you can do it again. Right, perfect. Right, so now that I've got that all in place, I'm now going to turn it over and I'm going to sew on the crease line. And then once I've done that, I shall take the tape off. And that is it, guys. That is your pattern matching done, and you won't have to sort of worry about it moving, or because this double-sided tape is going to hold that in place while you sew it. So no pins. So let's get on and sew that. So open the seam. And then take out your double-sided tape. And then give your seam a press. Okay, so here we are with our pattern matched beautifully. So now I'm going to match the rest of them. So we've got a 5 width flat piece of fabric, and then we shall go on to the next stage. Right, so I've now cut 5 strips of lining to the same drop as the fabric, and I'm going to sew these all together, and then we will have 2 long strips. So we'll have a long strip of fabric and then a long strip of lining. Right, so I've sewn all the linings together, and I'm now going to put them along the bench and iron the seams. I'll do that with all of them. We'll just keep pulling it along while I just iron the seams before I face it up with the actual curtain. I'm doing this one-handed so you can see. And I shall just keep going along. I've turned the lining over now so that the seams are facing downwards, and I'm going to lay the actual main fabric on this piece here, and then we're going to pin it at the bottom. So we're calling this the bottom. So I'm now going to just pin the face fabric onto this. So make sure that when you put your pelmet on, you are putting the bottom of the fabric at the bottom of the lining so you don't get the pelmet upside down. So I'm going to go from the middle outwards, line up my seams if I can. I think the lining is the same width as the fabric, so you should be able to line up your seams. So we know that this is the middle, lining up the 2 seams here. Make sure they're nice and straight, at the bottom. So I know that there's that little flower there. So I'm going to bring a little bit of that up. I'm going to make sure that I've got just a tiny bit of lining where my pattern is along the bottom, and I'm going to iron it where the pattern is along the bottom. So I'm sort of eyeballing it along here just to see what I've got. Now I know that I'm on that little triangle-y bit there, so I'm just going to bring that up like here, and then do it again here. So it's not a very straight fabric, I have to say. It's quite hard to keep straight, but it's one of those viscose mixed with a very light, quite a sort of light weave, like a sort of, almost like it's got a bit of linen in it as well, so it moves as well. This is where I'm going to sew. And once I've done that, I will pin this in place. So we know that we've got as much lining showing at the bottom, sorry, on the left as we have on the right. So that's 1.7. Let's bring that down a little bit. So now I'm going to pin this in place. I always start from the middle outwards, and obviously my crease mark will be my sew mark. But put plenty of pins in because it stops it from moving. I'll just put a couple near the seam as well. And I'm not traying my seams. It's a beautiful day today, by the way, guys. It is stunning outside. I may put some pins at the top as well, even though I'm not going to keep the pins at the top. It's just to keep it from moving. So I'll just put like one every kind of foot. I'm just going to carry on at the top. Oh, I'm putting quite a few at the top there. Didn't mean to do that. It's only just to keep it from moving when we move it, because obviously we're going to move it along on the bench. Now, if you're unsure about what you're doing on a corner, always use a set square, because that will make sure it's heavy and straight. Okay, so I've done that side. Now I'm going to move this along and continue with the other side. Right, so we're now going to sew the bottom, and we're just going to follow the crease line all the way along. Typical, just near the end, and I run out of bobbin. Right, once you've sewn all along the bottom, you then take all your pins out and I'm now going to go along the bottom and just trim it a little bit so that there's not such a bulk, because obviously the pattern wasn't straight at the bottom, so I've had to just go along and straighten it up by sewing along the pattern. Just do about 1 centimetre to 1.5 centimetres allowance. Okay, so I'm now going to turn the Pelmet inside out. So the way I do that is by, first of all, I'm obviously going to press the bottom. So let's turn it around so that we're flat on the bench, so we've got the lining facing away from us. I'm just going to press that first before I turn it round. The lining I'm using here is a cotton sateen lining. It's quite thin, but the fabric is very thick, so I didn't want too thick a lining. But it's lovely and silky and soft. So for this particular job, I think this lining is perfect. Right, so that's flat, and I'm just going to press that. If you just pull the lining away from you, don't do that with it, because that can stretch the lining and make it go out of shape. So just pull it away, like away from you like this. Amazing how much fabric you need for the size of the window when you're doing a Pelmet. You just can't believe it, because you know we're needing 5 widths, and each one is going to be sort of like that 40 drop, and more if you've got a pattern repeat. So you know, by the time you've got your 5 widths, turn it so that when we turn it round, we're going to have an inch showing here. So we're going to flip it like this, hold on to about an inch there, and then there, and then I'm going to flip it over and then do that all the way along. You now have a lovely little hem at the bottom here. Let me show you. So you have a lovely little hem at the bottom here, and you go along now with your ruler, make sure it's all flat and that, and you've got the same amount of hem showing all the way along. So I shall do that now. Because I've got plenty of fabric to play with, I'm just going to like turn it up to the lining first, and then I'm going to give that a press. Now, if the lining is the same size, just do the same thing. But I'm just going to go up to the lining first, turn it over, and then I'm going to turn it over again. Actually, I'm going to make sure we're off the salvage here, because I don't want to see any of the salvage when I turn it over again. So I turn it over again, and that is my edge. Now I might cut it down a little bit so that it's the same width as the width of the little bottom hem. But what I'll do is I will slip stitch here and then slip stitch all the way up there. Right, I'm now going to turn this around, so I've got a big old thing to turn around, but it's all pinned in place and nice and pressed, so I need the top end facing me here. So I'm going to move this. This is a very tiny Pelmet, and this is the buckram I want to use. It's single-sided fusible, so that's where the fusible side is. That's the smooth side. Now, if I did the Pelmet with this whole width of buckram, it would look a bit ridiculous because it's only 22 centimetres. So I am going to do my pinch pleats with just half of this. So I'm going to take half of the width of the Pelmet and then take half of this off, cut it in half and join it, because I don't want to waste loads of buckram. So I'm going to lay this on to the halfway point now. Right, so I'm going to show you how I do the calculations. I've measured the width of the fabric and I've had to adjust it a bit because I need the fabric to be 660 flat. So it was 668, but I've had to take in 8 centimetres, so I don't want more than I need for the actual Pelmet. So 660 is my flat width. So I just write that down. Flat width is just when it's all flat with no gathers, and that's what you've got to play with. Now, I know that my rail size is 270. So make a note of that. Now, with my 270, I know that obviously I've got 5 widths in this Pelmet, and rule of thumb is that you usually have about 4 or 5 pleats per width. In this instance, I'm going to have 4. If I multiply 4 by however many widths I've got, that gives me 20 pleats. So write that down. Now, if I've got 20 pleats, I'm going to have 21 spaces. So 21 spaces will also include my returns. So I'm going to take my returns off. Now, my returns are going to be 30 centimetres for both of them. So we've got 15 centimetres each side. So I'm going to take the 30 off the 660. So 660 minus 30 gives me 630. This is all centimetres. So we've got the 630, and we're now going to take off the amount of rail size that we've got. So 270 is the rail size. So from 630, we take off 270, and that leaves us with 360 for pleats. So we've done the workings out now. So basically we have to now work out how big our spaces are going to be. Because we had 21 spaces, we now minus 2 because we've taken away our returns. So we minus 2 and we're left with 19 spaces. So 19 spaces into 270 divided by 19 gives us 14.2 as our space size. So our spaces are all going to be 14.2 apart from our 2 returns. So we've got our returns are going to be 15 centimetres each. And our pleats, because we know we're going to have 20 and we know that we've got 360 for our pleats, we divide 360 by 20, and that gives us 18 centimetres for each of our pleats. I hope that's clear, guys, because you know it is a little bit confusing for some people. So just keep watching it and you'll get the gist. I'm sure you will. This is how you work out curtains as well. So we've got 14.2 for our spaces times 19. Returns are 15 centimetres times 2. So that's 270. Returns 15 centimetres each is 30. And pleats 18 centimetres each times 20 is 360. So when you add these up, 270, 30, 360. is 660, and that's exactly what we've got on the bench, flat width. So it should all go in. It should all sort of, you've got to be really accurate there when you do all your pinning and put your pleats in. You've got to be really accurate. Right, I've done the finished drop, which is 22, so it's a very small Pelmet, and I'm going to bring the buckram up to the top of the Pelmet where the crease line is, so you can see here. I will tuck it into the side, so what I'm doing there. I'm going to trim this back from the sort of top, trim it back, because obviously there's way too much there, and then once I've got that in place, I can then start sewing along the top. But yeah, that's what it looks like at the moment, so I'm now just going to trim the top. Right, so I've taken off the lining back to the crease line, just left a little bit to tuck in because I don't want to sort of lose the lining. So that's the crease line where the finished drop, the top of the Pelmet would be, and that's the finished drop. So I've cut it just literally a centimetre beyond the crease line. And then I'm positioning the buckram into this side piece here, and then tuck that in. And then what I will do, so I position the buckram up to the crease line of the fabric, which is there, and then let that sit there. And then I will go along and iron this piece against the buckram here, so that that will all get tucked in. And when I fold that over, there won't be any raw edges here, and that can be left because the glue on the buckram on this side will hold this fabric in. So you won't have to do any stitching at the top of the Pelmet, because can you imagine how long it's going to take me to do that and then that again? So I had to think about this one, guys. You know, there are ways of doing things a bit quicker if you can get your head around it, but this is a really good way of doing pinch pleats. So anyway, so let me just show you again. Buckram up to the crease line of the actual main fabric, fold that over, that gets tucked in, fold that over. Now I will do slip stitching along the side here and up to where the first kind of like return is. That will all be slip stitched there, and then the first pleat will start there, about there, and then from there I won't need to do anything. And then the other end I will do the other return. I'll slip stitch it from the 15 centimeters return up to the end along the line, along the edge there, look, up to there. So it'll look all nice and neat and tucked in. So I'm going to get on and do that, and I'll show you it when it's done. Right, so we've done the finished drop, placed the buckram in, tucked it over, so we've got the buckram, that sticky side here, which is holding this piece in. I still got to sew up to about there, and then I'll just carry on along, just pinning in. I'm going to do my pinning in of my pleats while I'm going along here, then I don't have to come back on myself and do it again. Right, now that I've got everything pinned in, I'm now going to start putting my pleats together. So I'm going to start by doing the first one. So the first pin I will tuck over to the next pin, like that, so that I have 9 centimeters, which is half the pleat from the 2 pins. So I'll marry those together, and then under the buckram, place my thumb and put a pin in line with this. And then I'll go to the next one. Obviously that's the space because you've got the pin there. So you now need to go from that pin to that pin. So marry those 2 together. Make sure it's nice and straight along the top. And it continues to be nice and straight along this edge here. So once that's all in line and you've got it nice and flat and straight, get another pin and find the bottom of the buckram and put your pin in line with the other one, like crossways. So you're going to do your sewing from this pin to the edge of the buckram. So what you can do is measure your 9 centimetres from there to there, there to there, and there to there, and then follow these measurements with your invisible marker, and that's where you will do your stitch line. You'll do the same here, visible marker stitch along here, and that will give you your perfect pleat and you'll have the perfect size pelmet. So just carry on doing that, and then I'll come back to you when I'm ready to sew them at the machine. Now make sure you put your marking on the side that you're going to do your sewing. So we know they're 18, so that's 9 there. So if you make your mark, join the marks together. Now this will disappear, but you'll have a perfect mark, so make sure you sew on that mark and go back and forwards a little bit at the bottom here to give that, you know, to reinforce that. And then obviously you'll then be able to do your pleat. So let's go to the machine and we will start putting our pleats in. Here it is, all 20 pleats. 270 centimetres wide. So all I've got to do is sew Velcro on the reverse at the top here so that it will stick to the board, and that's going to be done by hand. So that is your pelmet completed. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial today, and if you have any questions, let me know. Please share the video if you can to any of your friends and people that you know love sewing, and like the video because it helps my channel. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love you to join our little team, little family of sewers. It'd be lovely for you to come on board, so that would be wonderful if you could subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.